Hi friends, welcome back to Author Notes. I'm Tanya E Williams. In the last behind the scenes episode, I shared how this new historical mystery series I'm writing refused to stay neatly inside one genre tradition. The story kept pulling in two directions, personal and political, intimate and expansive. At the time, I thought I was wrestling with structure, but what I was actually wrestling with was history. When most of us think about the beginning of the Cold War, our minds jump to familiar places: Berlin, Washington, Moscow. We may picture speeches and summits, or perhaps military tension and ideological lines being drawn across continents. I thought the same thing. And because of that assumption, I initially imagined my story unfolding in the shadow of those global powers, close enough to feel the pressure, but not quite at the epicenter. But research has a way of humbling you. As I dug deeper into the years just after World War II, into the uncertainty, the rebuilding, the quiet fear that something new was taking shape, I kept circling one unexpected moment: a defection, a briefcase of documents, and a country that most people don't immediately associate with the opening chapter of the Cold War: Canada. The Gouzenko Affair, when I first came across it, I'll admit, I paused. I didn't recognize the name at first, but as I scratched the surface, I found I needed time to fully grasp its significance. Here was a Soviet cipher clerk walking out of an embassy in Ottawa in 1945, carrying documents that exposed a network of espionage operating on Canadian soil. It wasn't dramatic in the cinematic sense. There were no sweeping speeches or televised announcements. It was quieter than that. But the consequences were not. The revelations triggered investigations, arrests, and a wave of fear that rippled outward into the United States, into Britain, and into the fragile trust between former wartime allies. And suddenly, the neat narrative I had inherited about when the Cold War began didn't feel so tidy anymore. What struck me most wasn't just the geopolitical shift, it was the atmosphere. Consider Ottawa in 1945. The war had just ended. Relief was in the air. Families were rebuilding. Lives were trying to return to something resembling normal. And beneath that surface, quietly, almost invisibly, intelligence networks were being exposed, loyalties questioned, trust recalibrated. The rules were changing. And most people didn't even know it yet. That atmosphere, that fragile in-between, is exactly what my story had been reaching toward without me truly understanding it. A mystery shaped not just by clues and suspects, but by uncertainty, by the feeling that the ground beneath you might not be as solid as it seems. When I understood the weight of the Gouzenko Affair, something shifted for me. The hybrid nature of this series, the blend of intimate sleuthing and larger political forces, stopped feeling accidental. It started feeling inevitable. Because if you place a curious, observant woman inside a moment like that, a moment when information is power and silence can be survival, the stakes are no longer purely personal. They are layered. Her questions matter. What she notices matters. What she uncovers might matter far beyond her own circle. And that realization changed the way I began outlining the series. It didn't turn into a spy thriller. It didn't erase the personal threads, but it anchored the story in a very specific historical tension, one that belongs in part to Canada. I've always been drawn to exploring corners of history that feel slightly overlooked, not because they're obscure, but because they're quietly foundational. The Gouzenko Affair wasn't loud in the way some historical events are loud, but it marked a turning point. And for a story about secrets, observation, and the cost of knowing too much, it felt like the right place for this series to begin. This stage of writing always reminds me how much context matters. One discovery rarely stands alone. It reshapes timelines, motivations, and the emotional weight of every scene that follows. And once I saw the world my protagonist would be moving through, once I understood the air she'd be breathing, I couldn't avoid the next question. If this is the world she inhabits, who does she have to be in order to navigate it? That's where the focus turns next, not just to history, but to her, our protagonist. Her past, her formation, the experiences that would make her capable and credible in a world shaped by shifting loyalties and hidden agendas. Because in a world like that, curiosity isn't just a personality trait, it's a risk. I'll take you there in the next episode of Behind the Scenes. Until then, friends, happy reading. I'll take you there in the next episode of Behind the Scenes. Until then, friends, happy reading. I got it all the way through until the last line. Let me just do that one more time.